Yeah. Okay. The Dare County Planning Board meeting for Monday, October 12th will come to order. Please let the minutes reflect that members Finelli, Barr, Gore, Hines, and Shelton are present. Beth Midget is participating remotely, but she will be counted present. And David Overton is unable to attend this evening, so he is absent. Everybody should have a copy of the minutes from the September 14th meeting. I had one small change on there. It's on page 4. The very top, the first 2 lines, it should say that Ms. Kreef has stated that travel trailer parks in existence before the ordinance will be grandfathered. So that word "not" should come out on line 2. The ordinance will be grandfathered. That was the only change that I came across. Does anyone else have any additions, deletions, or corrections to those minutes?
Motion to approve as amended.
We have a motion from Terry Gore to approve the minutes as amended. Do we have a second?
A second.
We have a second by Buddy Shelton. Is there any discussion on that motion? All those in favor say aye.
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 Beth reports aye. Any nays? Motion carries unanimous. As far as public comment goes, we accepted some public input via email before the meeting. Everybody should have received copies of that. Moving on to old business. First item is a request for extension of a preliminary plat approval for the Cami Daniels subdivision in Wanchese. Don, you want to start us off?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to, Mr. Chairman. And typically we have representatives here for each item that's on the agenda, but since this was such a simple and straightforward request for an extension of the subdivision, I advised the surveyor that we would excuse him from attending the meeting tonight in light of the social distancing and the COVID restrictions. So there isn't anyone here to represent this item in front of the board tonight other than myself. And so the subdivision was approved for Chris and Cami Daniels in Wanchese last year in November of 2019. The subdivision ordinance provides that an extension can be granted if the request is received before the expiration of the original preliminary plat approval, and if work has begun on the improvements. There was a letter submitted from Seaboard Surveying on behalf of the Daniels, and he has outlined the work that has occurred to date. Staff recommends that an extension be granted for the subdivision for another 12 months.
Thank you. Planning board members, are there any comments or questions for staff on this? Any objections? Hearing none, we have a motion then to,
I'd like to make a motion that we extend for 12 months at the request of the staff.
we have a motion by Terry Gore to extend the preliminary plat by 12 months. Is there a second on that?
A second.
Second by Michael Barr. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Beth reports aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Moving on to new business, we have an amendment to an existing conditional use permit for the Black Dog Harbor in Salva, North Carolina. Once again, Don, you want to start us off on this?
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to. And this is the applicant, Mr. Mike Flipsack, and so he'll be answering any questions that the board may have that I can't answer. And so when this property was originally approved in 2004, it was approved as Aaron Hill Harbor, and it was a different set of developers at that time. It was subsequently sold and purchased. It's been called Black Dog Harbor. We did an amendment to the CUP where we changed the name and we allowed the change or the remodeling of one of the clubhouses. And so it's a group development. And when the original CUP was approved in 2004, it was approved as the residential development. And it features a harbor there that was, at that time that it was approved, to have boat slips that were to be for the exclusive use of the property owners in the development at that time. There were two conditions that were put in the CUP that are under consideration for amendment tonight, and those will be the two conditions that I'm talking about. The other conditions that are in the conditional use permit have not been requested to be amended, and so we're not going to be talking about those. This is a conditional use permit, and when we get to the Board of Commissioners next month, it will be held, because it's a conditional use permit, it will be held as a quasi-judicial matter. And so anyone that's there will have to be sworn in, and any evidence that's presented will have to be done so under the quasi-judicial proceedings. We have received email comments. We received email comments from the adjoiner to the south of the site, Mr. John Fort. Those comments were opposed to the conditional use permit. A copy of those comments were included in your packet that went out, and we have, subsequent to the packet being mailed out on Wednesday of last week, we have received comments, 8 other set of comments, most of them from the property owners and the development there, and all of the 8 other comments that we've received have been in support of the conditional use permit amendments, and those copies of those comments you received at your planning board email, but we've also printed out copies of those comments, so they are there at your seat. Mr. Flipzak is asking that the condition number 6 that says no commercial activity shall take place on the site be amended. He's also asking that condition number 7 that says the boat basin, boat ramp, boat slip shall be for the exclusive use of the property owners and residents of the development. Fuel service and fuel storage may be provided on site for the property owners and guests. No commercial fuel sales or storage shall be allowed on site. He's asking that condition number 6 be revised to read, commercial activities shall be limited to 2 charter boats used for fishing or cruising whose customers and crews shall park in the designated overflow parking spaces in the Black Dog Harbor. These charter trips shall be limited to the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and shall require annual approval by the Black Dog Harbor Association, Owners Association. He's asking that condition 7 be revised to read, the boat basin, boat ramp, and boat slip shall be for the exclusive use of the property owners, residents of the development, and their guests. It's a little change in the wording there to reference their guest. The property is zoned S1, and as you all know, all uses are permitted in the S1 district. It makes no distinction between residential, commercial, or industrial uses. If the property was vacant today and he came in and applied for a permit or a conditional use permit or a site plan approval to operate a marina there, we would issue that permit with no questions because it's zoned S1. And that's very important as it ties into the request that we have before us tonight. Conditional use permits, when they are granted, is a negotiation, if you will, of what conditions are going to apply to the site. And at the time that the original development went in, those conditions, number 6 and number 7, as they read today, were agreed to by the developer. And that developer was a different individual. As I say in my staff comments, the request is for the use of 2 of the boat slips, not all of the boat slips, 2 of the boat slips for fishing and touring charters with the specific hours of operation. There are existing overflow parking spaces in the development there that he proposes to use in association with the charter boats. He has indicated the hours of operation would be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. Last year, we did have some issue with the charter boat using the boat slip contrary to the conditional use permit, and they were taking duck hunters out, and the guys were going out there pretty early. And I contacted Mr. Flipzak, and he put a stop to that. And when he contacted me about amending the conditional use permit, my first comment was, well, those duck hunters like to go out there pretty early. I don't think the neighbors are going to like that. And so that's why the hours of operation are as he has requested, and he is in my conversations with him leading up to the submission to the planning board, he indicated that his agreement with the charter guys that he's in negotiations with is specifically not to have the duck hunters use the marina there. Duck hunters like to start really, really early, and he's reflected that in the hours that he is requesting. There are some crepe myrtle bushes there along the side that are adjacent to the property owner, Mr. Fort. Those crepe myrtle bushes were put in as part of the original residential development. When you're residential to residential, you don't have to have a visual buffer. The S1 ordinance requires you to have a visual buffer when there's commercial and when there's residential. So even though it's still remaining a residential development with the introduction of the charters and of use of the 2 boat slips, I think it's appropriate that we discuss supplementing or installing a buffer there. There are some pictures that are included with my staff comments. You'll see there that there's a retaining wall that's there, and so a fence or some other vegetation may be appropriate to put in there, and I'll let the board discuss that with Mr. Flipzak. In the original language for condition 6, there was also, I'm sorry, it's condition 7. There was language in there prohibiting fuel sales and storage. And my recollection of that condition being included in there was that it was designed to preclude the operation of the marina as a full-on marina where the boating public would pull in there and get fuel. That language has not been included in what he is requesting, and I recommend that the planning board discuss that with him again, just to see if he is agreeable to having some similar language included in that. And I'm going to stop right there and let you guys have your discussion with him and answer any questions that you guys may have.
Okay, thank you very much, Donna. Sir, just for the record, will you state your name and where you reside?
Yes, my name's Michael Phillipsack. I live at 27185 Black Dog Lane,
Okay.
there in Salvo. And I would just clarify that I'm here on behalf of the Homeowners Association as the president of that association, not as an individual or a business owner.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything, before we get into a discussion of this, do you have anything that you want to add at this time?
Yes, I would like to talk about condition 7 on the conditional use permit. Our concern over condition 7 was that it read owners and residents, and there may have been some misinterpretation on our part. The majority of the homes that have been constructed in the harbor area to this point, and currently there are 6 homes built on 12 lots. A majority of those homes are rental houses. And so it seemed a bit incongruent to me to have the conditional permits carry the language owners and residents. Perhaps in conversation with Donna, I've come to understand that a short-term renter is a resident. It was not my original interpretation, but if that is in fact the legal interpretation of that, then we would be willing to drop the request to modify condition 7 with that understanding. We just wanted to make sure that the rental guest would be able to use the harbor and the walkways and the gazebo and those sorts of things. And it seems logical that that would be intended and allowed, but yet I just wasn't clear on that when I read the conditional use permit.
Okay. I do think we need to take a look at that language in number 7. Typically, the term guests means if someone is staying in your house overnight, that's an overnight guest. If you have somebody that you're going fishing with and you're accompanying them, that is a guest. So I think the term guest needs to stay in there. But I think you need to add one more term about, say, like a tenant or something that who's renting these boat slips, because that does not fit within the definition of a owner, a resident, or even a guest.
Okay.
So I'm not sure exactly what word we want to add to that. A lessee,
Mr. Gore is the property management
a boat
expert here.
slip
We might want to
lessee
ask
or
him on
something.
what the appropriate one is, and we might be overthinking this, but I think if we're in the process of amending it, let's go ahead and get it so that it says what it's supposed to be conveying.
Right. I was actually originally going to say that I do believe that by law, you are considered a resident during your time of occupancy of the property because you do hold a legally binding lease. With that in mind, I can see where that leads to a lot of ambiguity. Typically within the industry, the term guest is used. However, if we were in a court of law, the term would be tenant,
Tenant?
specifically short-term tenant or tenant of less than 90 days, which indicates a tenant of less than a stay of 90 days. And Beth, you can fact check me on that.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't see, and Donna can help me with this, I just don't see in other subdivisions, usually a property owner conveys their, to their guests the same rights. I mean, I don't see it differentiated in most
There's,
things. But if we want to be super clear, yeah, I mean, definitely say tenants of the owner.
so that being the case, I think based on what we just heard is the only change that would be requested for number 7 would be, fuel services and fuel storage shall be for the exclusive use of the property owners, residents of the development, their tenants, and their guests.
Yeah.
Would cover everything.
That would absolutely cover everything, and in my personal opinion, would relieve all ambiguity. As a
well, is that
non-attorney.
going to cover somebody renting a boat slip? I mean, that's not,
They're not renting a boat slip, are they? They're just using it. Correct.
Usually, the use of the boat slip comes with the use of the house. Is that my understanding?
Part of the
Well, yeah,
bundle of rights.
we're kind of slipping into condition 6 now. So
Yeah.
the 2 charter boat operations that we're requesting, I think Chairman Finelli is probably correct. We would lease the slips to them on an annual basis.
so then condition 7, in addition to the residents, property owners, and guests, you should also, like, boat slip lessees.
That would certainly cover it in my mind, yes.
And they have to be
That's right.
handled. They have to be handled just as a real estate lease would be.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
It would be comparable to a commercial lease and not a residential tenancy.
And you're okay with the language about the fuel services and all that?
Yes, we've never objected to that.
Okay.
I think what the fuel language does is restrict any sales of fuel from that location. So everybody who has a boat fuels their own boat with no fuel storage, substantial fuel storage there on site.
Yeah, so I think, that last sentence there, no commercial fuel sales or storage shall be allowed on site. I think we can reintroduce that into condition 7 and it'll be okay.
Yeah. My recollection when we were discussing this back in the day was we just wanted to make sure that no commercial fuel sales or storage was going to be allowed there. That people could fuel if they had their own means to fuel a boat or whatever they're storing fuel, they could.
Right, yeah, we have no objection to that.
Okay. So noted. And so now we're back to our discussions of revised condition 6 and the buffer.
If I could just clarify, Donna, in your earlier comments, you noted that there was a retaining wall and a crepe myrtle hedge that exists between the HOA property and the neighbor to the south. There's also a fence there, I guess standard 42 inches high or somewhere in that neighborhood, that wraps the entire perimeter of the property. And we've also installed a slatted kind of trash fence to that perimeter fence as well, just to keep trash off of the neighbor's property, since we've had some construction activities in there lately. So there is a fence already existing there.
I'm going to just throw this in there, but given that location and given that exposure, the pictures that we're seeing here, obviously the crepe myrtles are deciduous and they're going to lose their leaves at certain times of the year, but that's, with the cedars and with the fence and with those trees, that's probably a pretty substantial buffer considering their location, being pretty much down front. I'm okay with the buffer that's there.
Yeah, because the bottom line is still a residential subdivision. A residential
Development.
Planning board members, anybody else have comments on the buffer, or do you see a need for additional buffering?
I do not.
I do not either.
I don't see a need.
Okay, Beth, thank you very much for those comments. I'm glad you had a chance to look at this. Doesn't seem like the planning board has any more requirements as far as buffering goes. Another issue is parking. The applicant has provided a tabulation on what's existing now as far as houses and parking spaces. And with the addition of 2 charter boats at this site, does anybody see any problems with parking or see a need to require additional parking?
I do not.
I do not either.
Beth, any comments on the parking?
No, obviously 1 to 2 cars at the most is what you'd have on that size charter. It's not like you're going to have, a party boat going out of there or anything large. It's going to be a small, relatively small boats going in and out of there. There's not going to be a whole lot of volume.
Okay, thank you. I don't have any problems with the existing parking that is there. So we've covered the buffer, the parking. Don, are we good on the fuel?
Yes, sir. The only thing that we probably need to make sure that the record reflects is that the board is okay with the hours of operation that he has requested.
Okay, so what we're looking at, the hours at 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. and the limit on 2 charter boats for fishing or cruising. Are those good with you, sir?
Yes, sir. That's what we requested.
Okay.
Yes.
Any comments, questions, problems?
Very reasonable recommendation.
Beth, any comments or concerns?
No, I don't have any concerns. I mean, there is a need for, small downside half-day inshore charters in that area. There's just not an avenue, and if the homeowners association is amenable, it appears they all are. I think it's a good move. I think that the challenge might be obviously making sure who's in charge of the duck hunters and not getting out there, in the wee hours of the morning to disturb people. But I think that's going to be up to them to enforce.
Yeah, Mike, that's your job.
And we have stipulated that we're requesting the 2 charter boats, but we are with further development in the subdivision. We agree that, the time for the commercial duck hunters has passed. So we're agreeing that is no longer a use that really fits. The only thing that I would add to that, though, is that the rental I don't believe there's any reason that we should preclude a duck hunter who's non-commercial, but recreational from renting a house, bringing a duck boat. If he can use the blinds or, hunt legally, then we
Absolutely. Yeah.
we would allow that as an HOA.
I was going to add that, if one of the houses was rented to someone and they
Yeah.
chose to come down here and go duck hunting, then there's nothing that we could do to stop that. They got-
Correct. Absolutely. I 100% agree with that. I think you're dead on point with that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and we acknowledged that it was a problem with the commercial guys who were duck hunting. We didn't know if they were bringing 2 boats or 5 boats. And frankly, we weren't here during duck hunting season, so we didn't have a very good way to police it.
Okay. We're not here to enforce covenants, but at the same time, I don't like trampling on them, especially when they're recorded at the courthouse. So to that end, I did go back and look at the HOA covenants going back to Aaron Hill and all of the amendments. And I found what is being requested here to be consistent with what is in your covenants. So that's a good thing. Does anybody else have any comments on the conditions or any additional conditions or concerns we need to address?
I think it's a good idea, but
Yeah, I like
I
it.
mean, it's needed.
Okay, thank you. Beth, anything else you want to add?
No, not at all. I appreciate, from the Homeowners Association, I really appreciate the feedback and everybody's communications there. It made things much more comfortable.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thank you for those comments, Beth. It's up to the commissioners how to handle this. We're here just to make a recommendation. And to that end, I think the chair is ready to entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we advance this to the Board of Commissioners. The 2020 addendum to Conditional Use Permit number 8-2004 for Black Dog Harbor Group Development with a favorable recommendation for approval contingent upon the changes in wording made to item number 7.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Who seconded that? Second by David Hines. Is there any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
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 Beth votes aye. Any opposition? Motion carries unanimous. So this will go to the commissioners, and good luck, and we thank you for taking your time out and coming to see us.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Don.
I'd also like to say thank you for coming in on behalf of the HOA. Most folks that come in that usually have some type of personal gain that they're getting out of it, but I really appreciate you coming in as a volunteer.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate those comments.
Good comment, thank you. Donna, when does this go to the commissioners? Okay.
Chairman, we need to recuse Mr. Barr from the discussion on the next item.
Yes, Mr. Bard, you wish to be recused, is that correct?
Yes,
And what is your reason for that, for the record?
for the record, because I'm not involved in the project.
Okay, thank you. I think that's a valid reason. Do I have a motion to recuse Mr. Barr from this item?
Maybe.
We have a motion by Buddy Shelton, second by David Hines. All those in favor say aye.
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 Beth votes aye. Motion carries unanimous. Okay, this item of business, it's a sketch plan review. Jason and Tanya Hill, 4-lot subdivision in Collington. Donna, go ahead and start us out.
Yes, sir. This is being submitted as a sketch plan at my request. in my recommendation or suggestion to Mr. Hill, who is the property owner. They've been trying for some time to subdivide this property. They own this property, which runs from Collington Road to the Sound, and a lot of the property, as you'll note on the plat here, is wetlands. It's a combination of 404 wetlands and coastal wetlands as you get closer to the Sound shore there. It's bounded to the west by a private right-of-way that's shown as Creekside Lane there. And Mr. and Ms. Hill actually have their personal residence that they access off of that road. And then the house in the front there on what's shown as Lot 1, they also own, correct? You own that? Yes. So you've got Creekside Lane there that's been there forever and ever, and it's one of those old easements, lanes that has come about through the development and family construction on the houses and all. And so there's a lot of heirs and a lot of people involved in that. And when Mr. and Ms. Hill decided that they wanted to try to subdivide their property, they thought that they would be able to get agreement from those other property owners to use that private road to access the subdivision of their land. And they have since found out that those folks can't come to terms, which leads us to where we are today. So their fallback, their plan B is to subdivide the land. And when you have to put in a road, the subdivision ordinance is very specific that a minor subdivision requires a 30-foot right-of-way with 20 feet of paving. There is language in the subdivision, the minor subdivision ordinance section that talks about exceptions to the minor subdivision road standards for property that involves, that's the actual word that's in the ordinance, involves 3 acres of land. This property is larger than 3 acres. And then, back and forth in the discussions with the Hills and the emails that I've exchanged, it just seemed to be excessive, if you will, to put in this 20 feet of paved road to service effectively 3 lots, because Lot 1 already has an access off of Collington Road. And my suggestion was, well, how about if we try to go to the planning board and see if they're agreeable with applying that exception language to this property if you, in recognition of the fact that Lot 4 has this huge area of wetlands that cannot be used because of the regulatory framework that applies, but to make that even more palatable for to defensible of us applying this language, how about if you apply a conservation easement to the wetlands that say, you can't use that? Then that would be recorded in the Register of Deeds, and it would be in perpetuity that's associated with the land. I will tell you that those conservation easements were very fresh in my mind when I had that conversation with Ms. Hill, because I was just going through my 5-year CRS review, and we get points for private conservation easements. And so when she was, Ms. Hill was expressing her frustration with the situation in the email, I was like, well, you know what? How about if we try this? And so that's why we're here tonight. I think it's a very appropriate application of the standards of the ordinance. I think the intent of the ordinance is met. And if they are willing to go to the expense of having an attorney draw up the conservation easement, then I'm okay with that. And I'm going to stop right there and let you guys tell me if you're okay with it. If not, then I'm sure they'll be back in front of us with some other plan. This turnaround here has been reviewed by the fire marshal, and he's okay with it, at least in his initial comments to me now. And that was, not a formal comment, but in the back and forth that we've been discussing this, he has indicated that he's okay with that. I haven't sent it to the Public Works Department, but I feel confident that they will be okay with it, or that they can make other arrangements. Some of the language in the ordinance that is also associated with the minor subdivision exception is that there is a condition that the property cannot have more than 4 bedrooms or 480 gallons of wastewater per lot, and that they put a note on there that says, please be advised that you may not have the school bus or a trash truck come to your front door. And so I think that they're agreeable to that. Their conversations to me have been that they're trying to subdivide the property for their kids. And when we were developing those standards to the subdivision ordinance that put that exception language in there, that was the express purpose that we put in there. That was why we put it in there, for people doing what we said, or considered at the time, was family subdivisions. Granted, the ordinance doesn't call it that, and you're relying solely on my memory, but I'm telling you for the record that that was the intent of why that language is in there. I wrote the language at the direction of the Board of Commissioners, and so I'm very, very comfortable with us applying that exception language to this subdivision. And I'm going to stop right there and let you guys ask any questions of me or Mr. Hill.
Thank you. Is it Jason?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Before I open it up to the planning board for comments and questions, you want to add anything or expand anything upon what Donna has said?
She pretty much covered everything. We're really only developing just over an acre. It looks like an acre and a third between the 4 lots there. And it just seemed a bit, excessive to really have to put that paved road in there. We are, building these small houses, hopefully for, myself, my wife, and our kids, to kind of hand down. This was my wife's grandparents' property that we ended up getting. We had to go through the auction to get it, but we ended up getting it. So, it's kind of cool. Hopefully we're going to hand it down and keep it in the family. She's a Collington native, native to the area, and it's just a really nice place back there, and we're hopefully going to upgrade it a little bit and develop it and, bring some additional equity to the community, I guess, right? Yeah.
Thank you. Planning board members, questions, comments?
The only thing I'd like to say is we've had an inordinate amount of discussion over building properties that are designed to really just house families as opposed to larger groups. And I like the idea of having a family group coming in and developing an area, but 2, the way they're going about it with the size of the properties and the intent, I think is laudable. I think it would be a benefit to our community to have it.
Thank you. Comments?
Ditto. I mean, you said it all. I admire you for doing this, and I hope it works out, and I hope your kids
I
get to
appreciate
enjoy
that.
it.
Yeah, build some nice modest houses and
Yeah.
have a nice little neighborhood there.
Beth, you have any comments or questions?
No, no questions at all. I agree with what has been said before. I just think, I think it fits exactly what we have been going for. I think everything, it looks good. Thank you.
This is more what we need in the community.
Okay. Thank you, Beth.
Right, and since it's a sketch plan, there's no formal action by the planning board tonight. You'll have to see it back again, probably in the same format as the preliminary plat. But since there was the question of whether we were going to apply the exception and if everyone was comfortable with that, that's why I said let's do the sketch plan.
So the exception is for the, it being associated with having wetlands that are conservation easement. Is that what it is?
Well, I think that if the planning board is comfortable with us applying the exception language, which means they can have a 20-foot easement with gravel improvements versus the paved road, and in combination, voluntarily put a conservation easement on the wetlands to address the fact that the property is actually more than 3 acres in totality, but we're only subdividing something that's less than 3 acres, then I think it's a win-win situation. And
I do also. I mean, we back up personally, just for us, we back up on a conservation easement with our property. And, you know, it is definitely the way to go if property owners are amenable to it. I just think it is definitely the way to go to keep, you know, to do a win-win situation.
If you guys are amenable to getting an attorney to write it up for you, I have absolutely no problem with you paying them to do that.
Right, and we're already working with some attorneys and, you know, George Wood and
Right.
stuff to
Right.
kind of get it all laid out and how it's supposed to be. Of course, Mr. Barr has been, you know, extremely helpful in getting everything laid out appropriately and I hope. it's
And
gonna come together.
Yeah, they say he's good at that.
I will email
I
you
hear you're good
a
at that.
copy of a conservation easement so you can see what it
Exactly.
actually does. And there's, even though it's in a conservation easement, it allows the other uses for residential and whatever. So there's nothing about that should make you uncomfortable.
Right, so basically this is just an easement to,
That applies to the wetlands.
Mhm.
That's
And-
all that it applies to
and
is the wetlands.
it's gonna be undisturbed wetlands is how we're gonna,
And it might actually be of a benefit to you from a tax purpose. I
Right.
dare say that having the attorney draw it up is cheaper than putting in a paved road.
awesome.
Yeah,
Yeah,
a little bit.
a little bit,
Well, it depends on the attorney. But
yeah.
Well, clarify this for me a little bit. What is the intent for Lot 4, and how does that fit into a conservation easement?
The conservation easement will apply solely to the wetlands. Yeah.
Okay, so on this sketch plan, we have an area on Lot 4. The intent is to fill that, is that correct?
They will fill what they need to get the 15,000 square feet. And then the conservation easement will be applied to the coastal wetlands. Yes.
It's two different things, really.
Yeah.
You've got wetlands, think of a marsh island, I mean, it's a type of grass, you can't develop it. On residential property where you have some high ground and some low ground, you can go to Army Corps or CAMA depending on the grass and get a permit. And then you pay into a mitigation bank so that they can fill that or whatever they need to do. So it's two separate things.
But one dovetails into the other.
Right. Because you can't go get a permit to go fill a big patch of
Coastal
wet.
marsh, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, but you can fill
Right.
Core, that's right.
four wetlands, yes.
Okay.
So it's a little confusing, but you have to separate it out.
Well, and that was the whole thing. When we first started these discussions, that's why Mr. George Wood has been brought in as the wetland consultant, because it was where is the coastal wetlands and where do they stop and where did the 404 wetlands pick up? And so that was important to the development of the plat to have that line and that
Delineated.
demarcation, because they are regulated and protected in different fashions by different agencies.
Okay.
Is there an action item we need to take, or?
No, we just need to give some direction so that when the applicant comes back.
Right.
We're not going to say, oh, that's not what we wanted or this. So, we need to address, the big thing is the road.
I'm good with the rock.
I like the idea of the gravel.
Yeah, if he gets conservation easement, perfect.
Yeah, the conservation easement would just apply to the wetland areas that's on lot 4.
Only apply to the coastal
Yeah, you don't need to be saying anything yet. So,
It's only applying to the coastal wetland.
yes, it's only
Yeah.
applying to the coastal wetlands, and I should have said that, but
Sorry.
yes.
No, I understand. Beth, any comments on that?
No, I'm good with what we're doing.
Okay, I am also acceptable to that 20-foot wide easement with the gravel and the conservation easement. Are we good on all that exception language, Don, if we go forward this way?
That's kind of up to the lawyer, but yeah.
Well, I think the only thing is the board just needs to indicate that we're okay applying the exception language. And what I heard Mr. Hines just say is, yes, I'm good with the gravel, which leads me to believe that, yeah, we're applying the exception language. So when the plat comes back in as the preliminary plat, they're going to have that certificate on here that says these lots shall be restricted to 4 bedrooms or whatever it is that's in the subdivision ordinance. I think you've got a copy of it in here. And that the language about the disclaimer about the trash pickup and the bus,
Right.
Okay.
something in there, yeah.
Jason, are you good with a 4-bedroom limit?
Oh, yes, sir, most definitely. There'll probably be 2 to 3 bedrooms max, and we already bring our trash cans out to Collington Road as it is now, so it's
There you go.
no different.
Okay.
Kind of hard to push it through them rocks if they're full.
Yeah. Nah, but we've been doing it down
I'm
Creekside
teasing, I'm
Lane
teasing.
for years.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. We got it.
Any other comments? Anything
No.
we need to be looking at here? Beth, anything else you want to bring up on this sketch?
No, I'm comfortable. Nope. Comfortable with everything said.
Well, there's no further action required on our part since it is a sketch plan. And
So-
again, we've indicated that we
Right.
are good with the
So
20-foot wide
right.
easement and a gravel.
Next month, we'll see it as the preliminary plat, and it should be a very quick review next month, since we've pretty much seen it as it is. But I just didn't want to tell them, sure, go ahead and let's move forward with the exception, and then you guys get in here and say, Donna, you've lost your mind, so.
Okay.
Correct. Thank you very much.
Thank you for
Thank
your
you.
time.
Yeah.
All right.
Stay safe.
Thank you.
I will
Thanks
send you.
again, Mike. Thank you, Beth.
Can I have a
And I'll-
motion to bring Mr. Barr back
Have a good
onto the
night.
board at this time?
So moved. Second.
We have a motion by Buddy Shelton, a second by Terry Gore to bring Michael Barr back on. All those in favor say aye.
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 Beth votes aye. Motion carries unanimous.
I'm gonna be the first to say, welcome back, Mr. Gore.
You were missed. You were missed.
Don and I have been talking, well, we'll talk about this after the meeting is adjourned. Is there any other business before us this evening?
Motion to adjourn.
We have a motion to adjourn by Terry Gore, a second by Buddy Shelton. All those in favor say aye.
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 Beth votes aye. Motion carries unanimous. Thank you, Gar. We're done for the evening. Thank you.